Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome! And if you're joining us from a previous video, hey, I love to see it and I'm so glad to see you again. It's Season 17! At the time of writing this, Season 18 is still premiering, so for all things considered, this is the tentative endpoint for my reviews. This was the season that was out when I started this journey all those months ago. Season 17 can be categorized as the first post-2020 event season. It's returned to form in a lot of ways, and honestly, there's a lot to love here. We get more experimental episodes, wild B stories, and one of the most wholesome and surreal stories American Dad has ever done. So, what worked? What failed? I need to see a live-action Gold Top Nuts directed by Neil Breen, so let's review Season 17! When Trishelle, the most popular member of the Langley Dollar Listings crew, goes missing and is presumed dead, they hold open auditions for new hosts, and Roger and Francine compete to see who can get on the show. Julie Bowen of Modern Family plays Trishelle. There is a small B story with Jeff making really good coffee and the family tries to monopolize on it, eventually getting it all shut down by the DEA when Klaus gets something from Colombia imported. It's a very small, almost vignette, but props to Jeff for actually standing up for himself and attempting to have some confidence. I just wish it had more time to develop, but it is solid for what it is. The A story of Francine and Roger fighting and eventually having Francine have to sell one of Roger's most eccentric properties to himself because she's just that good, just works. It's just a lot of really solid events, and honestly, this is just a really good episode of American Dad. We're coming right out of the gate with everything that you'd expect. Fun guest stars, a vibrant energy. It's a parody of realtor shows, and yet we've never seen that before. It's never been done. We're 17 seasons in and still feeling fresh. Langley Dollar Listings is a league's better season premiere than Who Smarted, and honestly is just a solid Francine and Roger episode. They have one of the best dynamics, and this episode really highlights it. I really did go into this season with low expectations, remembering my initial lukewarm response, but I gotta say, Langley Dollar Listings is a solid 9 out of 10, that if you're going straight from Season 16 into it like I did, it's a breath of fresh air. It feels like a true return to form. Stan has low self-esteem about his body, which, same fam, but he believes he looks horrible in anything he wears, and so he only wears suits, and when invited to a pool party, proceeds to pass out from heat stroke. So Roger, in a persona like Reynolds Woodcock, Daniel Day-Lewis's character in The Phantom Thread, yeah, we're going that deep with it, designs a Bad Goose line of clothing that gives Stan a whole new confidence and zest for life as he starts to live it up. However, Roger becomes possessive of Stan and keeps guilt-tripping him away from his friends and family to take care of him, even though he's been completely courteous and even invited Roger out with the gang, and he chose to not do anything. You actually feel really sympathetic to Stan here because he finally feels confident, and then it gets stripped away from him. I don't know, Stan is much more sympathetic this season, and I think it really allows for a more nuanced approach to his character. Season 17 is weird. It's not the most inherently experimental, but it takes a lot of weird chances that just keep paying off. The B story of the episode, however, doesn't. Jeff and Haley keep chickens in their room to prove to Francine they can raise chickens instead of using chicken punching brands. Odd thing to do, but I'm here for it. The chickens steal their van and terrorize them. Dressed Down is a 9 out of 10 that perfectly highlights the dichotomy of American Dad. Much like Roger Needs Dick, you have Roger playing a wild persona that is a bit of a deep cut, juxtaposed to just a really dumb B story about chickens hijacking a van. Only American Dad could do both at the same time and feel like it earned it. Stan doesn't know how to chop it up and just awkwardly blurts out whatever comes to mind, embarrassing himself in front of Steve. He then begins to panic and reveals that Tuttle is in witness protection for watching like 4 hits in a minute. We also get the first appearance of the barber shop, as well as the new character, the head barber, as well as a return of Thomas Lennon's character, who is just being added in more and more, and I'm here for it. I enjoy him. Honestly, absolutely brilliant showing by Richard Kind this episode as Tuttle as well. It really feels like a Stan, Tuttle, and Steve episode. Not that he's main cast or anything, but he's definitely up there in the rotation. Anyway, they drive Tuttle to a safe house, and Stan keeps trying to just chop it up like a normal human being, even picking up a hitchhiker to have someone new to talk to. Christopher Maloney is in this episode, and it is wild. The B story has Jeff writing things down in his diary so that he can recount them later. Seems perfectly normal, right? Well, he leaves it in the freezer. It's discovered centuries later and is turned into a religion for robot-human hybrids, or cyborgs, or whatever, science. Much like Brave Noob World, here we have just an absolutely absurd twist that is a self-aware framing device. They don't draw attention to it or even play it up, it's just Jeff walking around writing weird stuff down, and then you hear them teaching about the misspelled, weirdly worded diary, and you realize that they totally just made it their own thing. They read what they wanted to read into it. Like religion. Honestly, again, the Book of Fischer is a really solid episode, and if we compare it with Stan Goes to Chicago from last season, it's very funny that they seem to cover the same ground, but one does it way better. They're both about Stan being unfunny or unable to just chat with people, but the Book of Fischer gives you examples and actively showcases it in a much more nuanced way. The season so far has been just a net improvement compared to where the show was last season, and you really do love to see it. The Book of Fischer is another 9 out of 10. Now, the focus of the episode is on Roger. This is how Roger finds out who his newest persona is as he battles with internal conflict. Oh, and I guess if you want to talk about the story occurring in the background of the episode, we could do that too. Steve and Snot attribute 40% of their friendship to their weekday sleepovers while their moms do book club. Francine and Snot's mom get into a fight over Treasure Island and forbid one another from hanging out, even having Principal Lewis and Billy hunt them down and stop them from seeing each other. Steve and Snot decide to fake their own deaths and buy medicine/poison from Apothegary and go into a deep sleep that actually does kill them. And so Francine and Snot's mom have to go to hell and get back Steve and Snot's mom's kid. They take the elevator, make a deal with the devil, and yeah, they can bring their sons back if they hang out in a room for all eternity together. Where it shows that a mother's love is boundless and they do anything for their kids. But I can't emphasize enough that this episode is actually about Roger. None of that family nonsense. This is Roger's story. It's in the title. He's in most of the episode and is almost always saying something at some point. We also get a little B story where Stan has tattoos that remind him of what's going on, and it's really, really solid. Even a callback to Memento. It has a payoff at the end of the episode that, it kind of makes the whole episode work. Sure, we had Shakedown Steve last season, which was great, but this is just even more experimental weirdness. Last season was pretty tame in comparison. I'm not going to say it's a great showing, but I was never bored and it was definitely one of the better Snot episodes. It's a totally righteous 8 out of 10. The family goes on a ski trip to the mountains where Stan wants to relive his vacations from when he was a kid and realizes that he was really, really poor. Darren Norris and Swoozie Kurtz would return to play Stan's parents. When they get there, the old cabins have been torn down and Roger becomes a partier with DJ Avalanche, played by Craig Robinson. Stephanie Beatrice would also return, and the Keyblade wielder himself, Haley Joel Osment, also guest stars. The B story has Klaus getting a woman on a support line to find out why his phone isn't working and accidentally hangs up on the girl, and he believes she is the girl of his dreams. So he and Snot hunt to find out where she lives. Stan tries to rebuild his past at the dump, and the family try to support him the best they can as they struggle through it, but ultimately do go to the party to actually enjoy some of their vacation. Between Stan realizing he had a miserable childhood and his family coming to rescue him when they see he's in danger, not to mention Klaus going to find his dream girl who he only misses because she's out looking for him, this episode really knows how to pull at your heartstrings and makes you feel in ways you wouldn't think were possible. Again, I don't know what it is about this season, but it's rejuvenating, it's revitalizing. There's a weird undercurrent of hope that just flows throughout this season, and I love it. Epic Powder Dump is a brilliantly down 8 out of 10 that works both the heartstrings and your funny bone. I'll see myself out. But it is a solid episode, and I mean, sure, some episodes this season might not land right, but going back through, there really wasn't any that I was just completely gobsmacked by. This season really does feel special, and I can't quite put my finger on why. Stan wants Haley to move up in the real world when he discovers that Johnny 50's, his beloved 50s themed restaurant that he never went to, is closing. He decides to try and bring back 50s culture to Langley, and Haley's determined to shut down Johnny 50's to move up its sub-hub after installing a new sub-hub there, and hopefully impress corporate. And that's the whole episode. That's it. Stan talking about how violent the 50s were and why we should return to them, Roger as Wolfman on the radio, and Haley trying to grow up, all while Stan realizes he just wants to keep the memories he had of his time with Haley at Johnny 50's when she was a little kid, and he just doesn't want to lose those. Again, there's this undercurrent of familial love this season, and it's just really focused on how much the family cares for one another in their own ways. There isn't really a B story to the episode, and it's just a bunch of 50s jokes and parodies of things like Happy Days and Grease. But I actually think the A story handles the weight of the entire episode. It's not anything complex, and all things considered is a pretty tame episode, but it knows what it's doing and sticks to it. I really just did not have a ton to say about this episode. It does have a lot of quirks, it does have a lot of charm, the song is entertaining, and overall it is a solid 8 out of 10, but it is a little bit of a forgettable episode. That being said, it does lead directly into a weird Twilight Zone episode. Beyond the alcove. Francine struggles with doing a seating chart because she has no way of putting Klaus anywhere that he won't embarrass himself. She even does this whole horse tranquilizer Queen's Gambit thing to try and Jimmy Neutron brain blast a solution for it. We make references here. Have fun. However, at that same party, Klaus is actually charming and delightful. Everyone seems to be enjoying him. Francine begins to spiral because no one can like Klaus and starts going to more and more extremes to get people to like her and hate him again, steadily losing her sanity because it just doesn't make sense. How could anyone like Klaus? And then the truth comes out. Klaus has been brainwashing the entire city to love him. I think this episode doesn't get talked about enough, mostly due to its proximity to perfection, but it's honestly a really solid, surreal little adventure. It's Francine at her absolute strongest, and it really is unsettling when you think about it. How could Klaus be popular? It can't be done. And then you get to the downright Orwellian reveal that feels like a Twilight Zone episode all its own. We also get our first appearance of the flatter-chested than promised Nerfer, played by Rachel Dratch of SNL, not S&L fame. I genuinely really love Beyond the Alcove, and I'd say it's an excellent 10 out of 10 that has some of the best writing of the season yet. Again, it's a rebound like this that shows it was extenuating circumstances that impacted season 16. They've still got the pepper, and they're cooking up something great! Cooking, fire, we make puns here. Dumb puns, but puns nonetheless. Pow. Alright, gang, I'm gonna be real with you. This might be the weakest episode of the season. I'm so sorry. And yet, if I had to give it a score right now, it's still like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Which, if that's the lowest score, this is just an absolute fire season. See? We did it again. We have fun here. The A story has Stan signing up to be a volunteer firefighter while Francine gets annoyed at him. Keith David actually guest stars, which, first time he's come to the show, but always great to hear the legend himself. Francine then begins to set fires around town as she slowly gets seduced by the flames, and Stan has to keep putting them out as she makes bigger and bigger infernos. It's fine. I like the personified flame, that's a cool touch, and they're obviously going for something, so credit there, I guess. The B story has Roger performing as a knife-throwing persona, and he's really horrible at it, mangling his assistants every time and attracting a huge audience because of it. Neither story of the episode is bad at all, they're perfectly on the level, they just feel like older season episodes. I'd expect this from like season 11, not 17. Somewhere where they still were in that kind of Fox writing mindset. Like I said, probably the lowest score of the season, but still not bad in the slightest. It has a lot to love and is just overshadowed by the greatness right around the corner. Ooh, I can feel it. I can feel what's about to happen. It's gonna be magical. But for now, it's summer break. Snot and Steve are off to their old hole that they haven't told anyone about that got vandalized, and so Steve and Roger have to solve the mystery like only they can. as Wheels and the Legman. Bow, 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 bow. The B story has Klaus and Principal Lewis, a hashtag dream team, going out to party, and Klaus trying to pump Lewis up to go out there and take the city on and show them who they're dealing with. I love that Klaus and Principal Lewis are friends. They have a chaotic energy that really gels together. Between the cult, Steve going rogue cop, and just absolute dynamite voice acting from everyone, from Jason Mantzoukas to Christopher Maloney again, this is honestly one of the best Wheels and the Legman bits of all time. Like, to bring back something we haven't seen in seasons, it had better be good, and it more than earned bringing those two back. I love this episode. It's a 10 out of 10 that absolutely shines because it's absolute perfect comedic pacing. Some of the B story flounders a little bit, but the A story is just so strong that it keeps the rest up. Even just the fruit lick is great. Everything I can think of about the episode lands, and it's a very memorable background baseline American Dad that has perfected that formula. This is easily one of the best episodes of the season, and honestly probably a great way to introduce TBS American Dad to people. It gives a taste of the old ideas, some of that TBS flair, and if they just let it play over to the next episode, they get... Gold Top Nuts. Now, I'm not going to call this episode a religious experience, but it's close. The family are on a budget flight back from vacation when it crashes on a mysterious island, and they wake up naked, confused, and with no recollection of who they are. They explore the island and discover a lighthouse. Inside, a TV with a VCR, Google it, and a tape that just has a commercial on it for Gold Top Nuts. The family begins watching it over and over again and reshape their very identities around the dynamic in the commercial, about a guy whose boss is coming over to watch the big game, and them promising to always leave out the Gold Top Nuts. The family does eventually make it back to Langley, discovers it was just magnetism that was making them lose their minds, and just get eviscerated on live television. They're mocked, ridiculed, and just run into the ground for no reason whatsoever. And so the family comes together and tries to fight the siren call of the island once more, eventually coming to the realization that if you can't forgive and you can't forget, you just need to be kinder and try to bring more happiness than darkness in the world. You just need to put out the best nuts for those you love. Family Guy could never. Simpsons could never. South Park, Rick and Morty, whatever, could never. Never. This is one of the best, if not the best episode of American Dad. This is one of the best episodes of adult animation ever. This is what perfect television looks like. We as a civilization, as a species, would be elevated if we were all required to watch and appreciate Gold Top Nuts. Gold Top Nuts has a quiet beauty. It doesn't push as many jokes as possible into a scene, and the family aren't just trying to be wacky, they're earnestly trying to understand who they are and their society. We kind of saw this with Daysong Heavy Industries too, but this is much more focused and bred and a much better developed attempt, and I think I can attribute it mostly to the absence of Roger. Roger is not in the episode until the very end, and having him out of it shows just the family and how they're adapting, how they adapt in this foreign land. Roger, you could just say, oh, he's immune to magnetism, so he's just watching them be crazy, and maybe he tells them to live a different life, but they don't do that. They want you to focus on these characters. They want you to focus on their story. Gold Top Nuts is a 10 out of 10 that will make you reevaluate things in your life. It will make you want to leave out the best nuts for those closest to you. We can be hurt. We can be mocked and ridiculed, but if we leave out the best nuts for those we care for, we'll never truly be alone. Gold Top Nuts is a light shining in the darkness. It is true and unbridled art. Gold Top Nuts is an ascendant episode of television and a must-watch for any dadder, any viewer. If you see this and you've never seen an episode of American Dad before in your life, you need to do that. You need to watch Gold Top Nuts and feel better about yourself. This is a pin episode. This is a cerebral episode. You will walk away from this feeling evolved. This is, oh, Oh, I'm sorry. I did this entire review series to talk about this one episode, and it's glorious. Francine gets real into frogs. No, like real into frogs. If you're doing a marathon of the show and go from gold top nuts to this, just know I'm sorry. That's like stepping off in an in-motion bullet train, just wiping out on that Shinkansen. Yeah, Francine gets obsessed with frogs since the family doesn't want to hang out with her, and Greg absolutely hates it, just loses his mind. The frogs start to take over the house and worship Francine to effectively butter her up as they get ready for their total takeover and to use her as food for their eggs. The family goes to save her from her froggy fate. It's a weird and unsettling episode, but it really does kind of work. The family genuinely cares about Francine, and they're actively panicked when they realize what's going on and rush over to save her. It's just a reassuring thing to see, especially after Gold Top Nuts. Seeing Greg spiral is great, and there's even a little B story of Klaus just talking Jeff's ear off. I don't hate it, it's actually pretty funny, but overall, the episode just suffers from following greatness. It's still like an 8 out of 10, but how do you live up to being in the shadow of nuts? That being said, look at all the episodes we've had at the halfway point in the season. Do you notice anything? We've gotten way more weird episodes this season than any previous one, and we're still not done. This is a wildly experimental season, and honestly, I think it really pays off in the long run. And the fact that we're not just front-ended with quality shows that this is a properly structured season, unlike season 16. Steve goes to Philly, the city of love, and hopes that he'll meet the girl of his dreams there. Finding one girl he crushed on and trying to charm her with milk, he finds out that she's just Reese Witherspoon in disguise and hangs around Philly with Allie, played by Patty Harrison. There's a little side story of snot going around Philly with a crazy girl as well, and it's honestly just a fun, great little episode. It reminds me a lot of something like Independent Movie and just gives a solid Steve episode with these cutaways to couple stories of when they fell in love. It's fun! There's not a ton to analyze with it. I wish Allie showed up more, but I think that's just who her character is, and it's supposed to be a temporary thing, but it was still fun regardless. Smushed is a very competent 9 out of 10 that is Stan and Francine hanging on Steve's every word, just waiting for the news, and then Steve just realizing it doesn't matter and going with the flow. I don't want to keep going into the episode, but there's a part where Steve eats a pepper, and it might be one of the funniest scenes Steve has ever had. I mean, Scott Grimes has done this voice for over 300 episodes, and he is still knocking it out of the park. Really, all the voice actors have only evolved with their characters, and their performances never really seem to dip. It's a wild thing to see in action, but it does add an extra layer that makes the show shine. Smushed a Love Story is an excellent Valentine's Day episode that is nowhere near Valentine's Day. It's something that feels like a holiday special that never truly was. It has a lot of potential, it hits all the right notes, it's just an interesting place for it, but overall is a beautiful little adventure. No one can trust Roger with driving because he's always irresponsible. We get the return of Heinrich, played again by Terry Crews, which, I know, I'm sorry. I thought he was voiced by DMX too. We even get a little song with him too, another homage to the late great DMX. Roger feels dejected, and Klaus and Jeff find time to bond when the family goes to a pizza shop that then takes off into space. Yeah, I bet you had no idea the second half of the episode is the family dealing with being on a spaceship and combating the sun madness after Roger shoots them all into space. See if you can recognize Roger's spacesuit. Look familiar? It's the same as the suits in the Orville, the greatest not Star Trek show you aren't watching. Seth MacFarlane, Scott Grimes, the late great Norm Macdonald, it's honestly got a lot to love. I could sit here and talk about this episode, but what good would it do? Roger brings up Sun Madness. Want to guess who gets Sun Madness first? You want anyone? Anyone. By all means, yeah, Roger. That's right. The episode is predictable, and that's definitely not a bad thing. Remember, if it has a familiar formula, it's allowed to focus more on the jokes, and honestly, it does. The writing is still super sharp, and while not as strong as Smush, it's a great 8 out of 10 and great casual American Dad viewing. Like, not every episode has to be Gold Top's level. That's what makes an episode like that special. I am not bashing these episodes for being normal. If anything, it's great to have baseline episodes like this. You know what to expect, and I love that. Steve is doing a report on his dad for school and is totally obsessed with why his dad is great for a school essay. The B story is Francine trapped in a porta potty. Haley gets hung up on Steve thinking Stan is great at something and sets out to prove something isn't right. Steve's teacher is played by Jay Farrow, and I gotta be honest, he kinda elevates the whole episode with his performance. Full disclosure, I've been watching the newer episodes of Family Guy and was wondering why after so long they were getting a laugh out of me, and then I saw it. Jay Farrow was there in the credits. I genuinely believe Jay Farrow is one of the guiding lights for Family Guy and is one of the sharpest comedic minds of the modern era. And he does a fantastic job here showing off his talents. He's a super funny guy. But yeah, no, Stan is fudging his record and makes sure he looks super impressive without actually doing anything. And Francine is stuck in a porta potty. Lot of moving pieces to this episode. Honestly, again, much like The Fast and the Spurious, it's more just casual baseline American Dad. It's not the worst, it's not the best, it's perfectly fine. It's an 8 out of 10 that I genuinely enjoy watching if it comes on late at night. And plus, the Bullocks singing the baseball song is fantastic. It's delightful. I'm a fan. It's an excellent watch as you're zoning out. It relaxes you, it makes you laugh, but not too hard, and just lets you know that everything is gonna be okay as you drift off into a snooze. The show opens with a documentary zoom-in. The episode is a very complex parody of Jasper Mall, which was a documentary about, you guessed it, a dying mall. Roger is the janitor for the mall and the groundskeeper while the boss, Mr. Javits, is away. Steve gets a summer job at the mall with Roger while the family goes off to do their B story of doing a food truck thing. We then get a surreal, spooky, delightful little episode. It did actually air on Halloween, so I will say it's the Halloween episode of the season. But honestly, how it's presented is so fantastic. Very much in like a Midsummer idea, where it's not inherently spooky. It's the ambiance that's being set up. I love the development of it just being this dilapidated mall with a very dusk atmosphere, and Steve teaming up with the ghosts that inhabit the mall to stop the evil lich, Mr. Javits. The family food truck being incorporated into the mall food truck food court thing is great, and honestly, the episode as a whole is a solid banger. It has this air of 1980s glam horror like Chopping Mall, and it just works so well in large part to how it's not intentionally trying to be spooky. It's a slow burn that has a great payoff. You Are Here is an experimental success and arguably the best Halloween special the show has. You Are Here is an outstanding 10 out of 10. Barry has a party with the boys at his house and then they blow out his dad's speakers and they have to go out and get replacements from Roger. Stan tries to do a backflip. Honestly, it's a Barry episode, something we haven't really had before. Is it as good as Barry starring Bill Hader? No, absolutely not. But it does have a lot of charm, and honestly, Eddie K. Thomas does a phenomenal job carrying the episode. Barry has really been whatever they needed him to be, and this episode is just a shining example of what happens when they revisit a character and breathe new life into them. We've seen Tuttle brought into his own right during the TBS era, and honestly, this episode feels like Barry finally getting proper time to shine. Sure, we got evil Barry back in Stan and Francine and Connie and Ted, but we have never really seen this Barry. And having it be a Snot and Barry adventure with Roger featured actually works really well, exploring an almost never used dynamic. It's a very competently done and solid side character-focused story that shows there's still more to love about this delightful return to form. I Heard You Want to Buy Some Speakers is a 9 out of 10 that deserves your attention. The more I think on the episode, it's got such great guest stars that return back. You've got Gary Cole coming back, who's always wonderful, and it just offers so many great elements to visit. I went into it the first time absolutely just thinking it was a nothing episode, and then the second time fell in love with it. It really is fantastic. Haley Haley is leading a Girl Scout troop, and when Stan gets in trouble with the cops, he gets assigned to co-lead her Girl Scout troop, and Haley is shocked by how he takes over and shows interest when he didn't have any interest when she was a Girl Scout. She then is determined to sabotage them and win back her troop. The B story has Steve trying to escape to his fantasy world, but when he gets caught showering in the gym shower, he starts to slip and can't do anything right in his dream world either, and it's less and less of an escape. The Girl Scouts compete in a robotics contest, and yeah, it's a perfectly decent episode. It's nothing groundbreaking, but hey, I'll take baseline here and there. Honestly, as we turn the corner on the end of the season, there's still a lot of great episodes to look forward to, and while Haley Was a Girl Scout is in that same territory as, say, A Song of Knives and Fire, it delivers on being a competent example of American Dad. It's a 6 out of 10, and it's a perfectly okay episode to just have on in the background. You've seen the episode before, and honestly, it reminded me a lot of Haley's, but it seemed to be more about letting go of that hate and disdain instead of it eating you alive. It has a deeper message if you look into it, it's just surprising to see, especially after episodes like The Devil Wears a Lapel Pin. We've seen this angle before. We have seen Haley have this resentment for Stan, and Stan fully deserving it, but I don't know, this seems like the weakest example of it in comparison. I think that's why this episode doesn't work for me, is that Stan wasn't the absolute worst that he has been in the past. Remember, he made Haley a sleeper agent. Anything lighter than that, that's whatever. This is American Dad. You gotta earn your trauma. But the episode's not bad. Jeff can't say no to people and it's burning him out. Meanwhile, Stan creates Chicken Baby, the perfect Halloween costume. I'm not gonna lie, I love when Stan is like this. That unbridled confidence is what makes him just one of the best characters ever written. He is going to charge into a ravine with a smile on his face. Roger dresses up like Tony Mendez, the subject of Argo, since he's celebrating the Argo Museum in Fargo. It's a busy but solid little adventure. It's nice to have a Jeff-centric episode, especially when it shows him gaining some confidence in who he is. I love hearing Bullock talk about moon schedules too. It's just, there's something about it. I don't know, maybe it's Patrick Stewart's voice, but I could hear him say moon schedules for days. Please Please Jeff is a perfect showcase of why Jeff is a great character. He's both genuinely stupid and stupidly in love with Haley. He decides to taxi a giant plane cross-country with Tuttle as his co-pilot to show her he cares. Stan goes delusional looking for the one fan of his costume, and Steve gets called to mediate a full-on hostage situation. I will say, the fact that it's all in Stan's head, that he was the one that complimented himself and he walks away proud of how strong his self-conscious is really good. Like, that's a really clever way to spin that, and honestly, it pairs well with everything else we've seen about Stan just living in his own reality. And I do actually really love the end of the episode because Roger subconsciously suggesting for Jeff to drive the plane is perfect. Please Please Jeff just works because Jeff is such a good guy at heart. He loves Haley more than anything and she loves him back. It takes effort to write a healthy enough marriage that seems natural, and having Jeff be a lovable idiot has helped elevate him as a character again and again, not only this season, but the show as a whole. Jeff has earned his time in the spotlight, and honestly, you'll love to see it. Francine decides to build a garden even though she has a brown thumb. Stan and Haley follow Bev DiVincenzo on social media and basically cyberstalk her until they actually go out to visit her in real life. Roger remembers the perfect jambalaya recipe, and Klaus turns to Steve for help writing his script to impress John Cena, even referencing when Roger and Steve were writing partners in Season 4. It's been a while since we had an A, B, and C stories, and it almost feels like a return to form. Jambalaya is just a perfect episode. I don't know what else to say. It perfectly showcases the family just being their dumbest selves, except maybe Francine, who just had a dream and everyone keeps getting in the way of that. Naturally, Roger decides to open a jambalaya restaurant after remembering the aforementioned recipe, and even finds a frozen alligator that he nurses back to life. His name is Julius, and he's incredible. And the rest of the episode goes exactly how you think it would. Stan and Haley get nursed back to health by Bev, Julius gets kidnapped and then rescued by his previous owner John Cena, the jambalaya is good, all very predictable events that anyone could see coming from a mile away. I love Jambalaya. It's everything I want from just good, dumb American dad. Sometimes a 10 out of 10 episode is just that good because it's perfected getting a sharp laugh out of people. They know what you want. Just turn your brain off and trust that it's gonna be good. Sometimes there's deeper meanings. Sometimes there's a gold top nuts. And sometimes there's a Mardi Gras gator. And that's okay. It is okay to be dumb. Dumb is a form of comedy that needs more celebration. I'll say it, I think I was a little too harsh on Dr. Weitzman. I think I attributed him to a lot of the issues of the last season, and it wasn't necessarily on him. He's in this episode, and honestly, he's fine. It's Klaus's birthday. His boys have even come to visit. However, Klaus is being selfish, and that's no good. He reveals a past trauma with the old puppet show Gernot and Strudel, and so Stan and the clan decide to make a Gernot and Strudel episode to teach Klaus about the power of sharing. However, he has Dr. Weitzman put their bodies into the puppets and has them perform Gernot and Strudel forever. The B story has Steve trying to keep Roger sober for a piano recital and rushing to stop Delmonico from giving Roger what he needs. It is an inspired performance by Andy Richter as Delmonico. I absolutely love hearing him, and he has truly breathed life into this drug dealer. I enjoy Andy Richter. I think he's fantastic, and I know I haven't sung his high graces earlier in this season or even in this series, but it needs to be said that he is a wonderful addition. Gernot and Strudel is a really solid episode. The dialogue is great, I love the puppet designs being just unsettling enough, and it's great seeing them handle such a basic concept with such panache. Like, yeah, it's just teaching Klaus sharing is caring, but it goes so much deeper than that. They wouldn't give Klaus this much focus if he was a character they were trying to get rid of. Honestly, Klaus has had the biggest glow-up of any character in the show. He has some of the best A stories, and he's a genuinely entertaining member of the family. Oh, and he's a talking goldfish. No other show could do it. That's all I'm saying. Gernot and Strudel is a lesson learning 8 out of 10. While there is the Christmas episode left after this is considered both as a season and potential series finale of our beloved American Dad. Bullock is narrating as he talks about the hum. Just a steady, annoying hum echoing in the back of the mind and universe. And then Bullock shreds out in an IROC, and yeah, it's a lot of an episode. There's a lot here. Steve is worried about doing the right thing for his timeline and apprentices under Memphis Stormfront and goes into the Bloppler, where he awakens to the vision to see the future. It's a lot of timeline alternating wild nonsense that works in the best possible way. It reminds me a lot of Wonder Cabinet having Steve have these almost ascended powers. Roger wants to get back into music as the whiplashing talent that he is as Walt Whitman. I don't know, it doesn't do a lot for me, but the constant stream of people asking about that hum, even in the B story, is chilling in the best way. Fun fact, in the studio head's office after Steve gives his premonitions, he has a poster on his wall, and in the middle of it is Mazinger Z, one of the most prolific giant robots of all time. Echoes is a 10 out of 10, make no mistake, but it's mostly due to Steve and Scott Grimes' excellent performance. Honestly, huge props to Andy Daly, who is fantastic as Stormfront, and really brings more to the character than he ever needed to before. If the series had ended on Echoes, I think I would have been okay with it. I think it would have been the perfect bookend of a return to form after a horrible global event. However, thankfully, it kept going. It kept pushing through, and honestly, I'm so glad it did. Echoes isn't a finale, it's a checkpoint. Echoes is where you can look into the event horizon and know that if you stopped watching the show right here, right now, you could get a complete adventure. You could just walk away. Or you could turn and walk into that horizon. You could see what's on the other side. Oh, here we go. Demonetization speedrun. Woohoo! Roger gets deprived of actions at the annual Christmas gathering of not-clothed holiday enjoyers and basically becomes the Grinch, but he's called the Gronch instead. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you understand the joke? That's it. That's all there is. I hope you liked the chick from the Birdwatching Buddies episode about the egg madness, because she comes back. It's a Roger is the Grinch episode. There's only so many ways you can say that. Want to know what the B story to our Christmas episode is? Not our Halloween episode, our Christmas episode. It's Stan making a magazine for men and going to Barry for financing. This is the Christmas episode. They're making a magazine for men in the Christmas episode. No time travel, no battle with Santa, no angels, no nothing. It's probably one of the weakest Christmas specials, and honestly, it's disappointing. To go from Echoes to the Gronch is just such a tripping point. It's not a bad episode, but it does not hold up compared to what came before it. It's like a 6 out of 10, vastly overshadowed by just the rest of the season. If it was in any other season, it wouldn't be as bad. It would be a bad Christmas special, but not a bad way to end a season. Here, this is just bad. It's almost offensively bad compared to Echoes. I would take 10 Echoes over having to watch the Gronch one more time. It is just a slow burn slog. And there we have it. That's season 17, and honestly, it was a lot better than I initially remembered. We got a ton of really great episodes this season, and some that were even show-defining, I'd say. To bounce back from season 16 with such ferocity shows that it was not a sign of times to come, but rather just a misstep. This season had no valleys. It had no episodes I truly dreaded revisiting, and honestly, it was just the best of everything I needed it to be. So what was your favorite episode of the season? Least favorite? Anything you think I was wrong on? Right on? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you saw, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends we're out here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I just wanted to take these last few minutes to really emphasize how much this means to me. At the time of recording this, season 18 is still ongoing, meaning, for all intents and purposes, I'm caught up. Of course, I'll still cover American Dad as seasons come out, but this is the conclusion of the marathon to catch up. I started this journey, my content creation journey, over 10 years ago, but this journey 7 months ago. 234 pages of script, over 120,000 words, and even then I still don't think I did this amazing show and some of its episodes the justice they deserved. But you all tuned in. You all commented and helped turn my tiny page into something substantial practically overnight. I can never repay that kindness, and know that it means the absolute world to me. To be able to make any progress as a creator by talking about a series you absolutely love is so rare, and I am so genuinely blessed. So thank you all so much for watching. Know that it warms my heart to know that these videos were enjoyed by anyone. So long as one person gets something from these, they're worth it. That being said, with this, it's time to turn towards a new horizon. So, sayonara, minasan. I'll see you again soon when it's time to cover a true American classic and one of the best anime ever made, my fellow Arlenites. Until then, stay strong. Keep fighting the good fight. Know that I believe in you, and no matter what, I'll leave the best nuts out for you. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you next time.